Gather, if you will, round the water cooler of life where the day's discourses are discussed, dismembered, distressed, and just plain dissed. Welcome to the cooler, then. She is the Washington editor for National Review, a graduate of Yale University, which means we will not be discussing anything about the game. It's just not done this time of year. Eliana Johnson joins us. Eliana, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Let's get down to the whole Brian Williams case, because your article asked, did Brian Williams lie to Tim Russert? It would seem pretty much that, for whatever reason, Brian Williams pretty much lied to everybody at one time or another.
That's right, and I think the interesting thing about the Tim Russert case that I wrote about is that it happened quite early. People have written about, been chatting about how the lie got worse over the years. Well, his conversation with Tim Russert took place in 2005, just 2 years after the incident happened, and he talked about the captain of his own helicopter being struck by AK-47 fire and a bullet whizzing through his ear, and that captain being awarded a Purple Heart. Of course, no such thing happened, and it was actually a soldier on the helicopter in front of him whose cheek was grazed with shrapnel as a result of a bullet whizzing around in his helicopter, who was wounded, and who the soldiers aboard that helicopter say received a Purple Heart, and who they took care of when that helicopter was struck by RPGs and small arms fire. So obviously a vastly different story, and the embellishments started quite early on.
You bring up a great point, and there have been certainly a lot of investigations. NBC is now launching one, I guess, into Brian Williams' expense accounts, where they're trying to find out exactly where he has been, where he might not have been. But the social media feeding frenzy here, the shark, the blood in the water here, hasn't it really just gone a little too far? I mean, yes, the man lied, made mistakes, but it's not as if all of a sudden the earth is imploding.
I think it's hard to say, because you have something happening on both sides, which is the elevation on the part of NBC itself, of their anchors, to a sort of godlike position, and that's it's a very business savvy thing for them to do, because they want the audiences to put this trust in their anchors, and they're elevated into these positions. That's done by lighting, it's done by their clothing, it's done through a lot of different things that the art of television has brought into the homes of viewers, and also social media is a part of it. So one part of it, of course, comes from NBC. The other part comes from the audience. And so I think it's very hard to blame this exclusively on sniping commentators. And the other thing I think is important to note is that the people who are sniping about this, by and large, aren't the viewers of NBC Nightly News. The viewers are largely older people who like Brian Williams very much and think he's handsome, and those are the people who will be more important ultimately to his fate than will be the people sniping on Twitter or on Facebook about this right now.
Trust me, let me tell you something. You work in the business long enough, you get knocked off a perch every now and then. You kind of lose that idea. Every now and then it happens. All right, minute to go here. Quick word from you. Chelsea Manning, the former Army intelligence analyst, 35 years in prison for leaking documents to WikiLeaks, now a contributing opinion writer for the Guardian newspaper. As a journalist, what do you think about that?
You know, this puzzled me a bit because, well, of course it's making headlines that The Guardian hired Chelsea Manning. I was really wondering who would want to read the columns of Chelsea Manning on this, and from a business standpoint, that will be critically important. And so that did puzzle me from a business perspective. They have somebody who's charged with treason writing on military matters. I'm puzzled.
I guess what they're going to do, they're saying that it's going to be about her transition to a woman, and that's going to be the important thing or the interesting thing. I just don't know if people are going to be interested in somebody who is, in many eyes, a traitor.
Better positioned as a sex or gender identity columnist.
There you go. Exactly right. To get somebody who could be one of the bigger traitors in U.S. history is interesting indeed, but it's The Guardian. I think we understand why. Eliana Johnson, we are all out of time. Please come back. Let's do this again. We'll pour you another cup of coffee at the water cooler. Thanks a lot. All right.
Thanks.
Coming up next, a side of the Brian Williams story you haven't heard, because the media wags making hay from his lies and his mistakes would not dare call themselves out. We will, especially one. We'll talk about that when we continue right here on MidPoint.